Hello, everyone. Welcome to the San Francisco Jewish Film Festival. My name is Margherita Ghetti, and I am the Next Wave programmer here at JFI. It is my pleasure to introduce our guest, Amin Naifeh, who is the director of 200 Meters, which is the centerpiece for the narrative feature film category at this edition of the festival. I also want to say a big thank you to our ASL interpreter today, Tisha Riley, who is here to help us make sure we make this program accessible to many. So 200 Meters premiered, correct me if I'm wrong, Amir, at Venice in 2020, right? The Giornate degli Autori, and has shown at several festivals. So we're really honored to have this film as a centerpiece in our lineup and to get a chance to chat with you. So hello, Amin, nice to be here with you. Thank you for joining us. How are you?
Hello, thank you, I'm fine. Thank you for this chat, and I hope that everyone is feeling good and safe at their homes or wherever they are.
Thank you. I hope so too, and I'm sure everyone is really curious to hear about the film. It was a really powerful, it's a really powerful film, obviously very intimate and political at the same time. It has a sweetness to it, and it's profound, and at the same time it is so gripping. There is so much action. So I'm sure everyone is curious to hear from you. So why don't you start by telling us a bit about how the film came into being and what inspired it?
Actually, the background of I think why I wanted to make the film, because I am myself kind of living the same situation as the protagonist. I am from the West Bank in Palestine. My mother comes from a Palestinian village, which is now on the Israeli side. And since the wall was built in the early 2000s, I could no longer go to that village to be with my grandparents, my uncles. And to be honest, I grew up there, more than in my hometown. So suddenly I could not be there with my friends, I was a child. And, year after year, it became more traumatic. So after I studied film, I think it was normal that this was the first story or subject I would address.
Okay, thank you. That's very interesting and helps us, get into the film even more. So can you say that it's based on memories, right?
Yes, actually, the story and the characters of the 200 Meters film are all coming from real life. And I was really paying attention to the details. Each character is something that is either happening or have happened, like the whole smuggling journey, the German journalist, everything is real. I did not invent any fictional character.
Wow, that's amazing. I have so many questions about the characters and curiosity about even the minor characters. I think your protagonist, Ali Suleiman, does an amazing job at kind of keeping together the vibe of the film and the crew of people that he finds himself traveling with, and yet, as you're describing, it makes sense that each character has their own individual story.
Yes.
Is there any of these characters that you want to tell us about? I'd be curious to hear if there's any story about
it. Well, I can tell you maybe about the story of Mustafa, the protagonist of the film. I met many, by coincidence, or also from my relatives or friends, or that I had to meet or met many Palestinians who are married to Palestinian women who has the Israeli nationality, and their life is really so difficult because he cannot be with her. He cannot just legally live on the other side, because after the wall was built, before the wall was built, it was possible that if you are a Palestinian with an Israeli nationality, you can pass it to your husband.
Right.
There was a possibility, but when the wall was being built, it was no longer, and until today, it is not an option anymore. And that's why many organizations are calling this like an undisputed apartheid. So, I met these people, and actually, this happened when I met this person. I studied nursing before filmmaking, and back then I was a part of a theater group. Our teacher asked us to search some interesting characters, and this was the man that I met by chance, and I heard his story, and I think it was one of the reasons why I wanted to tell this story, because I got really so touched by his story. Like, he cannot be with his family. Like, this is insane.
Right. Thank you. And did you take care of I'm assuming you took care of casting the actors yourself? Did you look for people that looked like them or that felt like them? How did you approach that?
Yeah, I think I was really lucky with the casting. I did it myself. It was not easy. And of course, first of all, I am so lucky to have worked with Ali Suleiman, world-class actor, amazing man.
Amazing,
And and actually he helped me a lot when we were like reading the script and preparing with other actors, because 70% of them, it was their first experience. They are not non-professional. They are coming from like other artistic backgrounds or like theater background. First time on camera, first time on screen.
Wow.
So, but in my selection, when I was casting, I was really paying attention that they are coming from the same background as the characters written in the script.
Nice.
So, nice. For example, the youngest in the crew, or in the Rami, yes. He was asked once by a journalist, like, how did you prepare for your role? And he said, this is the character of Rami he's a boy that exists in each house in Palestine. I see him every day in the street. So, wow. Yeah, the characters are really coming from our everyday life. So
wow. It makes sense. It feels like they're all very real, and I think you did an amazing job, because we get really close to the characters. It's like it's easy to feel for them in a way that doesn't usually happen to minor or secondary characters. Doesn't always happen. And I had super strong feelings, not necessarily positive, which was a very interesting position as a spectator, and in particular as a woman toward the German girl, because there's so much pressure on her, and at the same time she's doing something that it makes sense for her, and everyone is kind of criticizing and putting blame on her. How did you find her? How was to insert her in the cast?
So as I said before, that all of the characters are coming from real life. This is a story that I happen to know. That a German filmmaker came to Ramallah and teamed up with a Palestinian man. And they made a short documentary about smuggling. I was interested in this, and I thought of, would it fit in the story of 200 meters? And after thinking and, I thought that yes, it would, really like have a powerful, what do you call it? Addition to the story.
Yeah.
Because like there are many layers to her character. Like, for example, you have this her acceptance in the group keeps on changing about her background. Is she German? Is she Palestinian? Is she Israeli? And so the chemistry is always changing based on that, and not on who she is as a person. So, and you have like the reaction of the Palestinian passengers who thought that she might be a spy, which is also a normal reaction, So yeah, I like to play with these details, but also to maybe I don't want to say everything why, because I would like to keep it for the audience, but also for like the final confrontation when like Kifah found out that she speaks Hebrew and he lost his mind. You know, many people ask me like I would share like one of like the things that I would like to highlight, which is why Mustafa was fine. You know, it was like, okay, so what? She is Jewish. And Kifah was like, "Why are you Israeli?" This is a difference of generations. You know, this is very important. Mustafa is working in Israel since 20 years, and he is meeting Jewish or Israeli people. Kifah, which is my generation, we grew up. There is a wall. We have never met an Israeli except on checkpoints with guns. So, you know, this is why the younger generation will always have this reaction.
Wow, that's really powerful. Thank you. I have two questions based on what you just said. Is the German character the woman who wants to make a film, as you said, inspired by a story that you heard? Were you trying to make in any comment? Maybe it's a stretch, but were you trying to make any comment on media representation or films about the conflict or about smuggling, or is it just her character and it ends there?
No, I think, of course, there are many angles about like why this story was in the film. You can name that as one, and also about maybe also how people who come from outside and they think they are helping, but they are making more problems. You know,
right?
Like maybe because of naivety, maybe because of other things. You can have also maybe. I just lost the idea. Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's an angle that I think as spectators it's really important to reflect on aspects of filmmaking, but also how we position ourselves with external realities. For example, when we're tourists, right? She says we're just traveling to be able to pass one of the checkpoints. So that was an interesting moment. As I said, I was very taken by her character and by her story. Maybe because I could relate to some of the dynamics that she went through. And I was also very interested in what you just said about Mustafa, the protagonist. As you said, it's linked to the generation that he was able to keep calm and be more kind of understanding and compassionate despite his life being heavily affected, right, by the situation. So it's just a comment about how expansive his character felt, and his suffering going hand in hand with his very positive, caring aura. He becomes kind of the dad, the father figure in that. Yeah. So I love that. And then the last scene with the colored lights, it's kind of the culmination of the character, which, yeah, I think it makes the film even more special. You know, I'm sure for the people watching us at this festival, you know, presenting this film at Jewish Film Institute, it's giving us a great opportunity to reflect on that reality. So can you share with us, this is, I think, a more generic question, but was there any scene in particular that you remember shooting that was particularly adventurous or memorable or improvised, or that brought surprise?
Actually, yeah, there were many scenes that I have so many memories because, you know, we shot on real location next to checkpoints, to the wall, to watchtower, and these areas you cannot get a shooting permit. So we had to be fast. We had to be in small units, and you know, I had my adrenaline was like here. So because I was worried about the cast, about the crew. It was not like in danger, or like in that we would be hurt, you know. But about the camera, or like confiscating the memory card, or like ruining the day, or maybe deporting the director of photography because she was a foreigner. So I was afraid of all these scenarios, but thankfully nothing happened.
Okay.
But yeah, I think one of the memories I have is that when we shot the scene in the trunk, when Rami comes out and like suffocating, when we did the first the rehearsal with the camera at the location, I started to cry because it was so powerful. It was I was like of course, you know, I had mixed feelings because finally I'm making this film after 7 years of trying to find the money and development and all these things. But then finally, because this kid, like he really, like, he was so powerful in the scene, and just imagining that this is real life, you know, this happened to real people, you know. So yeah, it was like, I was like, my tears were coming down. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's to me was the most, you know, tense moment of the film, obviously for many probably, and almost hard to watch, almost hard to stay with the with the scene in its entirety, and so I think the relief that you felt is somehow also felt obviously in the film. It's like a new phase of this crew start. So it's yeah, it was beautiful. Was there, as you were speaking, I was wondering, was everything scripted, or did you let the character interact among themselves also freely?
No, it was scripted. So like we had like a full script with dialogue. But what we did, which I think was very helpful, is that in the rehearsal, like when we had the table read and with the whole crew, the whole cast, there was a flexibility, you know, for them to try to find their own words, you know, so I was not rigid about what I wrote. And that's maybe why some of the humor and being spontaneous came more to become more believable, because they were being themselves. But on location, they were like saying what we have agreed to.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah, there's so much. There's many moments in which yeah, it appears that they're given kind of a general sense of where to go, but then their own personality and chemistry comes into the picture. Yeah, that's beautiful. So thank you. I mean, I think there's many more curiosities about the film, but in the interest of time, we'll leave them for maybe the next time we meet. Who knows? Maybe in person when it's possible to, for good, be in theaters again. And thank you so much for making this film, for sharing it with us. And also want to thank everyone for tuning in today. We hope you get to enjoy more of our film festival screening and conversation. So thank you all so much, and see you all very soon.